Let's jump right in. Have you ever thought about how a single split-second military decision made thousands of miles away could literally empty your local pharmacy shelves in just a matter of days? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving deep into a fascinating and, frankly, urgent red team simulation known as Operation Damocles. We're going to map out exactly how a suspended, highly volatile conflict in the Middle East could bypass diplomatic channels entirely and trigger a cascading, localized supply chain collapse right at your front door. If you want to understand the literal nuts and bolts of how global geopolitics directly impacts your everyday survival, you're absolutely in the right place. Here's the agenda for today. First, the illusion of control. Second, 4 black swan triggers. Third, military and civilian tripwires. And finally, cascading local crises. We're taking a strict macro to micro approach here. We're going to start way up at the 30,000-foot view of global triggers and then zoom all the way down to your neighborhood fuel caches and medicine cabinets. All right, Section 1, the illusion of control and why diplomacy can't hold the string. We're essentially looking at this giant sword of Damocles hanging right over the Gulf states, and it's suspended by a diplomatic thread that is fraying much, much faster than most people realize. Now, when analysts look at a paused kinetic strike, two rival nations pulling back right at the 11th hour, they often assume absolute control. They assume top-level politicians can just hit a magical pause button. But look at the reality of what we call a tightly coupled system. When military, economic, and cyber networks are this deeply intertwined, the sheer volume of moving parts makes predicting an exact trigger mathematically impossible. Data just moves way faster than human decision-making. That means a single point of failure, like a misread radar or an autonomous drone swarm, cascades before a politician can even pick up the phone to de-escalate. There's a really fatal flaw in that whole situation room logic. You see, diplomats fundamentally assume they're dealing with rational actors operating under strict top-down chains of command. But the reality unfolding on the ground, it's entirely different. The theater is just saturated with decentralized militias, rogue actors, and frankly, completely exhausted human operators who have been staring at glowing radar screens for 72 hours straight in high-stress environments. The politicians think they're holding the string, but actually they are completely detached from the very forces that can cut it. Okay, Section 2, 4 black swan triggers, and what happens when that frayed string finally snaps? Because when it does, it won't be from some highly planned military offensive. It's going to be a black swan event. So the red team analysis ran this massive sand table simulation and identified 4 specific mathematical black swan triggers that could independently spark a multi-domain war, completely bypassing presidential orders. You've got Scenario Bravo, an internal mutiny by an ideological hardliner trying to sabotage peace talks. Then Scenario Charlie, a cyber false flag using spoofed radar to trick an adversary into a preemptive strike. And Delta, the algorithmic phantom. This is the real wild card, where AI and automated defense grids glitch out and essentially start a war all by themselves. Honestly, any of these could be the spark, but it's Scenario Alpha that really demands our immediate focus. Scenario Alpha is all about decentralized proxies taking completely independent action. It really proves that the tail can and absolutely will wag the dog. The crucial takeaway here is that Tehran doesn't have some master joystick to remotely control its proxy networks. Let's break down exactly how this rogue proxy threat works. Picture a highly decentralized subfaction, maybe a radicalized Houthi cell or an Iraqi Shia militia. They share an ideology with their backers, sure, but they definitely don't share a strict chain of command. If these guys feel like their central leadership is selling them out for a diplomatic pause, a local commander could just go rogue. They could independently launch an unannounced drone or missile swarm. If those munitions hit a fully loaded U.S. Arleigh Burke destroyer or critically damage a Saudi Aramco oil terminal, boom, massive casualties, instant economic shockwaves. Retaliation happens immediately and the war begins. The string isn't cut by a president, it's cut by a proxy. Section 3, military and civilian tripwires, validating the risk. We need to shift from these simulated triggers to the physical, real-world tripwires that tell us a major shift is actually happening right now. Listen to this chilling piece of human intelligence straight from the ground. Dubai is a ghost town. The confidant's brother-in-law and sister are now stateside. This information tells us something is about to happen. This isn't just a casual observation, right? It perfectly captures the immediate evacuation readiness of commercial centers in the UAE. When highly cleared military families and deeply embedded insiders start quietly packing up, the geopolitical posturing is over. The kinetic reality is here. Understanding this ghost town protocol is so important. The Gulf states intimately know they're basically the region's glass shield. If the U.S. initiates strikes, adversaries are going to immediately target undefended energy and commercial hubs in places like Doha, Dubai, and Riyadh. So when you see Arabian Air Force pilot trainers suddenly flying their family stateside and hedge funds charting private flights out of Al Maktoum Airport, you are literally watching the smart money flee before the airspace mathematically closes. They're telling us the glass shield is about to break. If you want to know what's really going on, watch the hardware, not the politicians. Take the USS Ford carrier strike group. People usually think a ship coming home from deployment is out of the fight for months. No way. The U.S. military's compressed capability is wild. They can execute a total personnel recall in just 48 to 96 hours. Working around the clock, they can rearm that massive carrier with heavy munitions at Yorktown in 4 to 6 days. And they can have that strike group surging back toward the Red Sea in 7 to 10 days. That hyper-compressed timeline is incredibly dangerous because it shrinks the window for diplomatic negotiation down to almost zero. But here's the absolute most chilling indicator on the board: the forward staging of expeditionary medical facilities and massive supplies of whole blood. The military simply doesn't mandate emergency blood drives or fly pallets of refrigerated blood and elite trauma surgeons across the globe unless their data mathematically projects imminent mass casualties. That is a definitive, undeniable pre-kinetic tripwire. You don't prepare for peace with refrigerated blood. Section 4. Cascading local supply crises, the micro-impact. Let's bring this macro crisis all the way down to your front door and see exactly how global maneuvers crush local supply chains. $150, minimum. That is the immediate projected price of a single barrel of crude oil if those black swan triggers snap and the Strait of Hormuz is mined. We're not talking about a slow, annoying climb at the gas pump over a few months. If 20% of the global oil supply gets erased overnight, that $150 price tag creates an instant economic shockwave that literally breaks the back of global transport. That massive price spike triggers what we call the supply chain death spiral. Step 1, oil hyperinflates past $150. Step 2, panic buying drains retail gas and diesel stations in hours. Local reserves are just gone. Step 3, major logistics arteries like the I-5 corridor completely shut down because commercial trucking fleets have zero fuel to operate. And Step 4, because the trucks stop, warehouse distribution freezes. Perishable food rots in transit, and your local grocery store shelves go bare instantly. Just like that, a maritime blockade 7,000 miles away paralyzed your local highway system. And we're not just talking about the abstract economy here. We're talking about tangible, local survival. When this cascade hits, specific things vanish. Critical pharmaceuticals, like Creon, Reglan, and basic life-saving antibiotics, will completely halt in distribution. Local diesel caches will get drained instantly by panicked cities and citizens. In this scenario, your survival mandates an immediate reliance on physical, air-gapped data storage for your critical documents, and absolutely dependent on things like solar microgrids just to keep your fridge cold. So, what does this all mean for you? In a tightly coupled global system that is rapidly degrading, the macro players are going to aggressively play their zero-sum games. But when the macro grid fails completely, will you be the last one bleeding out on a ruined battlefield, totally dependent on a shattered system? Or will you be the quiet, self-sustaining node that actually saw the tripwires and prepared for the fallout? This explainer is your blueprint. Take a hard look at your perimeter, check your logistics, and use this knowledge to build some real resilience. Thanks for diving into the mechanics of Operation Damocles with us today.